Welcome to OOTO, the out-of-the-office investigation into personal health actualization. This time we're discussing truth, meaning, and context. I'm Sue, and as always, I'm here with Bob.
Hey everyone. Look, today we are taking on one of the biggest, oldest questions humanity has ever asked. What is truth? And yeah, I know that sounds a little philosophical for a Tuesday morning, but our whole analysis today is built on this one idea. Your answer to that question, whether you realize it or not, has a direct line to your stress levels, your relationships, and even your long-term physical health.
That's really the heart of it.
We're going to take you on a journey, starting with the foundational ideas from ancient Greece, then diving into the messy, complicated world of human psychology, and from there, we'll blast off into the strange, reality-bending universe of quantum physics. Our goal is to connect all these massive, abstract concepts to the one question that really matters. How do we live healthier, more whole lives?
So we're kicking things off with this incredibly modern, almost cynical question, famously captured by Francis Bacon. Pontius Pilate asks this, but then he just walks away. He treats it like a joke, right? A political problem he'd rather not deal with.
And that attitude is the perfect place to start because it shows this timeless human urge to just dismiss the search for truth as a waste of time. But let's be real. In our world today, a world literally drowning in information, misinformation, and algorithm-driven stories, Pilate's question isn't some joke anymore. It's the challenge of our time. How do you build a healthy mind or a healthy body or a healthy society if you can't even agree on what's real?
So to really get our arms around this, we've broken down our analysis into 6 parts. First, we're going to build the foundation, this classical idea of truth as a solid objective thing you could build a civilization on.
But right after that, we're going to get into the messy part, the human allure of the lie. From a psychological angle, why do we find falsehoods so tempting, sometimes even dangerously so? Then, we'll see how modern physics came along and basically shattered that old solid foundation, which forced us to rethink, well, everything.
But don't worry, we are not going to leave you floating in chaos. We'll explore a fascinating way to synthesize science and spirituality, and then we'll bring it all back home. We'll land on the most important part of this whole investigation, how you can actually use this deep understanding of truth as a practical daily tool for your own health and performance. It's a journey from the cosmos right down to your cells.
Okay, so let's start by laying that groundwork. To really get why our modern world feels so shaky and relative when it comes to truth, we first have to understand the bedrock it was once built on. So we're going back to ancient Greece. Thinkers like Plato and Aristotle, they were trying to create order out of chaos. And for them, truth was something real, something stable, something you could aspire to. It was the foundation for a good society, and even more, a good person.
And the absolute cornerstone of their entire project was this really powerful idea from Aristotle. He didn't just see truth as something we say, he saw it as a property of things that are. He basically said philosophy is the knowledge of truth, and for him, that wasn't about opinions. It was about investigating the very fabric of existence.
Exactly. It's a concept called ontological truth, and it can kind of twist your brain at first. So think of it like this. Saying the sky is blue is one kind of truth. It's a statement that matches a fact. But ontological truth goes way deeper. It suggests that a thing, like a tree, possesses a kind of truthfulness in its very being, in its treeness. It is true to what it is. For these ancient thinkers, reality itself was soaked in this inherent truth, long before we ever showed up to talk about it.
And this distinction you're seeing here is so important. Most of us, in our daily lives, we live on the left side of the screen. Correspondence truth. I say something, you check it against the facts. If they line up, boom, it's true. It's practical. It's how we navigate the world.
But the Greeks were obsessed with the right side, ontological truth. They believed that reality was fundamentally ordered and true, and that our whole purpose as humans was to align our minds and our actions with that deeper cosmic truth. It's like the difference between correctly describing the notes in a song and truly understanding the mathematical harmony that makes it beautiful in the first place.
And Plato just grabs this idea and turns it into this profound moral quest. For him, being a lover of learning, or what he'd call a philosopher, meant you had to be a lover of truth, almost to the point of obsession. It was the central virtue, the one that all other good things grew from.
Right. And this wasn't just about being book smart. It was the absolute core of living what the Greeks called eudaimonia, a truly flourishing life. I mean, think about it from a modern health point of view. You can't build a strong body on a diet of junk food, right? Well, Plato's making the same argument for your mind and soul. You just can't build a good life or a resilient character on a foundation of lies and self-deception. The search for truth is really the search for the right building materials for your own life.
Which, of course, brings us to the big, messy human problem.
If this pursuit of truth is so vital for a good life, like Plato said, then why are we as a species so incredibly drawn to falsehood? Why do we lie to other people? And maybe even more importantly, why are we so good at lying to ourselves? This is where we have to pivot away from that clean philosophical ideal and get into the complicated reality of human psychology. And frankly, this is where it gets really juicy.
Francis Bacon, who we started this all with, had this incredibly sharp insight. He argued that we don't just tell lies for a specific reason, to make a quick buck or enjoy a good story. He believed that we have, and this is his amazing phrase, a natural, though corrupt love of the lie itself.
Whoa, a love of the lie for its own sake. That's a really powerful and, honestly, disturbing idea. But if you look at it from a modern psychological view, you could reframe it. Maybe isn't a corrupt love so much as it's a deeply wired survival mechanism. I mean, self-deception can be a really effective way to manage crippling anxiety, at least for a while. And lying to others can be a shortcut to social status. So maybe what Bacon saw as a moral failure is actually a twisted feature of our evolution.
That's such a great point, Bob, and it totally explains why lies can be useful. But I think Bacon was getting at something even stranger, more subtle. The pure pleasure of it. That simple preference for a flattering story over a hard fact, even when that fact would serve you better. It's the difference between using a lie as a tool and just enjoying the way it feels.
You're listening to OOTO with research by author Paul Buley.
And Bacon uses this brilliant metaphor to explain that pleasure. He says that truth is like a naked and open daylight, and that it doesn't show the world's flaws and successes half so stately and daintily as candlelights.
Oh, that is a perfect image. The harsh, open daylight of truth can be brutal, can it? It shows every flaw, every wrinkle, every uncomfortable fact. But candlelight is soft. It flickers, it hides the rough edges, it creates these dramatic shadows. It makes everything seem a little grander, more romantic, more beautiful than it might really be. In that sense, lies are just a kind of flattering mood lighting for our own reality.
And this love for the cozy candlelight gets supercharged by some basic glitches in our own thinking. Centuries before Francis Bacon, another philosopher, Roger Bacon, laid out these 4 timeless stumbling blocks to truth. And honestly, they're not just some historical footnote. They read like a perfect diagnosis of our modern information crisis.
They are terrifyingly on point. First up, weak and unworthy authority. Just think about blindly trusting a celebrity's wellness fad over actual medical advice. Then you've got long-standing custom. That's the classic, but we've always done it this way, right? The argument that kills any kind of innovation. The third one, the feeling of the ignorant crowd. I mean, that's basically social media mob rule in a nutshell, where outrage just steamrolls reason and evidence. And that last one is the most personal, the sneakiest one. Hiding our own ignorance. It's that deep, gut-level fear of just saying, I don't know, which ironically is the only place real learning can ever begin.
So for centuries, the challenge seemed pretty clear. We've got this beautiful ideal of a solid, objective truth, but our own flawed human brains and social habits keep getting in the way. It was a human problem. But then, in the 20th century, a bombshell dropped. The challenge to truth suddenly wasn't coming from psychology anymore, it was coming from our most successful and rigorous science, physics.
And this is what we're calling the Great Modern Rupture. The totally bizarre discoveries of quantum mechanics started to suggest that the very solid ground that Plato and Aristotle thought they were standing on, well, it wasn't solid at all. And it raised this terrifying new question. What if reality itself isn't some fixed thing just waiting for us to discover it? What if it fundamentally changes just because we're looking at it?
This is the famous observer effect, and it's a principle that just completely blows up our normal common-sense view of the world. Down in that bizarre realm of subatomic particles, you can't be a passive observer. The very act of measuring where a particle is can change how fast it's moving. The observer isn't separate from the experiment. The observer is part of the experiment.
It is a seriously mind-bending concept, but there's a pretty simple way to think about it. It's like trying to measure the temperature of a tiny cup of tea with a huge cold thermometer. The thermometer itself is going to change the temperature it's trying to measure. Now, just imagine that's not some small error, but a fundamental law of the universe. It just unplugs us from that comforting old idea of a totally separate, objective world that's just out there.
There's this amazing analogy that makes this quantum problem so clear. Imagine you want to understand a bird. In step 1, you just observe it. It's flying, it's singing, it's a living, dynamic thing. That is the whole truth of the bird. But to really understand it, to analyze how it works, you feel like you have to capture it and dissect it. That's step 2. You're moving from just watching the whole thing to breaking it down into parts. And here's the profound and kind of tragic final step, step 3. The thing you're now analyzing, the pile of feathers and bones, is no longer the thing you set out to study. The life, the song, the flight, the very essence of the bird is gone. Your active analysis destroyed the very thing you were trying to understand. That is the quantum problem in a nutshell. Our attempt to know reality with perfect, analytical precision changes that reality.
Okay, so classical truth got complicated by our own psychology, and then that entire idea was basically vaporized by quantum physics. So where in the world does that leave us? Are we just lost in a sea of total uncertainty? Well, this is where some thinkers are proposing a really bold and honestly a pretty controversial idea, a new kind of synthesis.
Right. After all that deconstruction, the big question is, can we rebuild? This next part explores this really fascinating idea that maybe we can bridge the gap between two things that seem like total opposites, objective science and subjective spirituality, to find a deeper, more unified kind of truth.
This quote from the technologist Joe Firmage really captures this new idea perfectly. He's essentially arguing that the whole war between science and religion is just a big misunderstanding. He thinks science uses the language of math to describe the objective universe, which he calls the cosmos, and religion has traditionally used the language of intuition and metaphor to describe a higher reality, often called God. It's a really provocative claim. He's basically saying they're just two different languages trying to describe the same thing. But, to be fair, a lot of scientists and philosophers would push back on that hard. They'd argue that science is built on testable, falsifiable evidence, while spirituality is based on faith, which you can't test. They'd say you can't just mash them together without breaking the rules of science. And that is the central debate right there. But the argument for finding some kind of synthesis is still really compelling for a lot of people. You're listening to OOTO with research by author Paul Bulow.
And this table really just lays out that argument visually. You've got science, using rationality to chase after objective reality, and you've got spirituality, using intuition to seek a more personal, transcendental truth. The synthesis idea says you actually need both of those things to get a truly complete, holistic picture of what it means to exist.
Right, it's like saying you need both the Hubble telescope and the meditation cushion to see the full picture. But that brings up a huge question. Are those two methods really compatible? Can you really use intuition in a lab? Or hardcore rationality in a spiritual practice? Or, by trying to combine them, do you just end up with something that's not really science and not really spirituality? That is the core of the debate.
It absolutely is. But the people who believe in this synthesis argue that it's the only way forward. They think our biggest problems in the world, which are both technical and deeply human, can only be solved if we have both hard data and a deeper sense of shared meaning and connection.
And this really pushes the idea of truth into a whole new territory. It's not just about collecting facts anymore. It becomes this kind of ethical roadmap for humanity's future.
That's it exactly. The argument goes that if you look deep enough into both what science is discovering and what the great wisdom traditions have been saying for centuries, you start to see the same core principles popping up. Take interconnectedness. An ecologist will show you a web of data proving a forest is one big interdependent system. A Buddhist monk, through meditation, will arrive at the exact same conclusion about the nature of reality. Different language, different method, but the same underlying truth. The hope is that by finding more of these shared principles, we can build a universal foundation for everyone to thrive.
Okay, Sue, we have gone from Aristotle's ancient school all the way to the quantum foam and into this grand cosmic synthesis. It's been a massive trip. But now we have to land this spaceship and bring it all the way back to what we're all about here at OOOTO, personal health actualization.
Yes, this is the most important part of our entire investigation. We have to connect this huge philosophical search for truth directly to real, tangible benefits for our bodies and our minds. It's time to make it practical.
So here it is, the big question we have to ask. How can truth, meaning, and context, all these abstract ideas we've been talking about, actually affect our concrete mental and physical health? Is there a real biological link between living truthfully and living well?
Oh, I believe the answer is a huge, definitive yes. And it really comes down to one word: alignment. Just think about that awful, gut-twisting feeling of cognitive dissonance. You know, when you say yes at work, but your entire body is screaming no? That's a state of misalignment. It's like a low-grade civil war happening inside you, and your body keeps score by pumping out stress hormones like cortisol. The opposite of that is coherence. It's when your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all singing the same tune. And that's not just a nice feeling. It's a specific physiological state that we now know is incredibly good for us.
And this chart here gives us a pretty simple way to see it.
Down there at low alignment, you're living in that state of constant internal conflict. You hate your job, you pretend you love it. You're in a relationship you know is wrong. That constant friction is a major source of physiological stress, and it is a direct pathway to things like chronic anxiety and, crucially, hypertension.
This is so important. Understanding your personal truth, meaning, and context, and making healthy daily choices for your diet, your behaviors, and your medical care is absolutely critical to your physical and mental health, and especially for recovery from conditions like hypertension. When you live out of alignment, your body's fight or flight system is just always on, and long-term, that is devastating. It leads to inflammation, high blood pressure, and a weaker immune system.
Exactly. So to answer that other vital question, can truth, meaning, and context improve our mental health and relationships while supporting physical optimum performance? Absolutely. As you move up that chart toward high alignment, where what you do every day actually reflects your core values, you're not just getting rid of that chronic stress, you're actively creating the biological environment for optimal health and recovery. You're giving your body a signal of safety and integrity, and that is the key that unlocks peak performance.
So then, what are the key elements for actually getting to this state of alignment in our daily lives? Well, it's a whole system approach. There's no magic pill. Truth, meaning, and context suggest our body's health is connected to our diet, actions, nutrition, sunlight, fresh air, personal energy, and our clarity routine, that alignment of our actions, words, and thoughts.
That's right. Every single bullet point here is a chance to practice truth. It starts with your diet. Being brutally honest with yourself about how the food you eat actually makes your body feel, not just what some trend says you should eat. It's about your actions, closing that gap between the person you say you are and the person you actually are every single day.
It even goes down to your environment. Are you being truthful about your body's basic biological need for things like sunlight and fresh air, or are you telling yourself you can thrive under fluorescent lights for 12 hours a day? It's about clarity, finding a routine of focused thought, whether it's meditation or journaling, that lets you see your own thoughts clearly, without lying to yourself. All of these things work together to build real, personal energy and vitality.
So in the end, you can almost think of it as a core system directive for being human. The active, daily pursuit of truth, when you understand it as this practice of alignment, is what literally tunes your body for success. And this alignment, it's not just about avoiding sickness. It's about actively creating well-being. Truth, meaning, and context can be linked to an overall healthy outlook and a peaceful life. When you get rid of that internal friction, you just have more energy. You get into less conflict with others. And that, of course, leads to healthier, more honest relationships. The bottom line is, truth, meaning, and context aligns our bodies to a healthy environment for both mental and physical success.
So we end right back where we started, with that ancient question, what is truth? But as Francis Bacon also said, the enjoyment of truth is the sovereign good of human nature. Our entire investigation today suggests he was absolutely right, not just philosophically, but physiologically.
Which brings us to our final thought for you today. Don't get overwhelmed trying to solve the cosmic mystery of truth with a capital T. The real work is personal, it's practical, and it starts right now. The real question is, what is the one small truth in your own life about your health, your work, or relationship that you can choose to align with starting today?